Hi, my name is Robert. This video is designed to give you step-by-step detailed instructions on completing the task at hand. Please read the comments in the About section of this video. It has valuable information and updates. My YouTube channel has a disclaimer video that I encourage you to watch. And please like, share, and subscribe. I hope you found what you're looking for. Thank you very much for watching. In this video, I'm going to be replacing the fuel pump separately from replacing the entire fuel pump sending unit. Anytime you have a fuel pump go bad in a vehicle, there's two ways to do it. The preferred method is to buy the entire fuel pump assembly. A lot of people call that the sending unit. That can range anywhere from $300 to $700. Now people are replacing the pump within the sending unit assembly. So they'll take out the sending unit, they'll dissect the sending unit to get the pump out, they'll put a replacement pump in that sending unit, and then put that old sending unit back in the fuel tank, which is another option of replacing the fuel pump. Very few cars have fuel pumps outside of the tank. Most of them have the fuel pump in the tank in the sending unit. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to take the sending unit apart and replace just the pump on the sending unit. People do that because the pump is a lot cheaper than an entire sending unit with the fuel float and everything like that. This video is going to show you how to replace that pump only. The sending unit is normally still fine to use for several years. Sometimes the floats start going bad. If you have a problem with your fuel gauge, you may want to replace the entire sending unit, but there are a lot of pump options when it comes to just replacing the pump. Try to get a quality pump. You also want to know that these pumps, they have little plus and minus on them, positive and ground. You don't want to reverse polarity because the pump will run, but it'll run backwards. And you want to test the pump before you put it in the sending unit. You know, just a few tips you need to know. Now, before you go in the tank or disconnect any fuel lines, one thing that's good to do is to relieve any expansion in the fuel tank, pressure buildup from maybe the car getting hotter than it was a few hours ago. The best way to do that is to access the fuel cap to the fuel tank, unscrew the fuel cap. That will bleed off any pressure in the fuel tank. That way, when you disconnect a fuel line, you won't have fuel oozing out of the fuel line trying to relieve pressure from inside the tank. Let's go ahead and get started. This should let you know everything you need to know. Whenever you're putting a part in your car, I suggest you get a good quality part that should last a while. There's such a price difference in these different pumps, it's kind of hard to decide. There are some names that I'm familiar with that's been making fuel pumps for 100 years. Bosch, Denso, Helco, of course the OEM pumps, Walboro, stuff like that. I recommend you try to get one of those pumps. Those will probably start around 75 bucks and go up from there. Man, they got pumps on some of these websites that they start at 12 bucks. You know, the term, you get what you pay for. I don't recommend you do that. All that aside, you got your plug here, 5 pins. Only 2 of these pins run your fuel pump. You got a positive and a negative. So you see that little plus there? This is the positive side of the pump. And the connector, this is the pump that's in the sending unit. The pump that I have looks to be significantly longer. So let's take a look at that pump. It might have a hard time fitting in there because it's a lot longer than the one that's coming out. Actually, it's about the same size. Here's the sending unit. You got all these wires coming in here. You see these 2 wires here, this blue and this black. Those are the ones that power the fuel pump. The black one is going to the negative. The blue one is going to the positive. These are the 2 wires that are on the far side. These other wires are going to the sending unit. The sending unit is the float that tells the car how much gas is actually in the car. This is the pump that's going out. I could actually test it put power to it, see if it powers up. This is the pump that I got to replace it. As you can see, it's close to the same exact size. The body of it's a little longer. So what I want to do here is take the dust caps off of it. Look like the dust cap fell off the bottom, and hook up the connector and put power to it to make sure this pump works. I don't want to put a pump in that doesn't at least appear to work. So let's go get our jump box to test that. Then we can also test that one, see if it works. Maybe try to figure out why it wasn't pumping. Here's the pump. I removed the cap off the top and bottom. I have my jump box hooked up to positive. When I clamp this negative on here, I should hear this pump run. Kicked on, appears to be running strong. Pushing air out that way. Sucking air in that way. So that pump is going to be pumping fuel when we hook it up to the car. And that's how it sounds. Appears this pump works. So we're going to work on putting it in. Now, there's somewhat of a myth that is going around that if you run a pump without fuel in there, it burns it up. Putting power to them, letting them run all night, throwing them in their car. As long as it can get air or fuel through there, it will cool it. Fuel will cool the pump, stop it from overheating. I hooked one up one time, let it run for probably 15 minutes, and the temperature of the pump only raised like 10-15 degrees. It wasn't like it was getting hotter and hotter and burning out, and it kept running. So don't be afraid to test the pump. Now, this sending unit is somewhat of a delicate unit. You don't want to beat it up. You don't want to damage the gasket. You don't want to damage the float. So try to not rough this up. You can see it has wire connections going to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to unhook the hose right there and get the pump unlatched from the sending unit, and we'll put the replacement pump in there. Make sure you put a sock on there. Your sock is your first line of defense from the pump sucking up things out of the tank, even though the tank is clean. And then we're going to get this installed after we hook up the wiring to it. Now, I don't know if this wire harness will plug into our new pump or not. If it does, we'll just keep that wire harness, but we can have a wire harness if we have to. Now, this fuel line here and the fuel line that comes in your kit is fuel line that can be submerged in fuel. This is very expensive fuel line. It's not the same as fuel injected fuel line that is designed to take fuel pressure. This line is also designed to be covered with fuel and not degrade. So this stuff, man, it could be as much as $40 a foot. Not like the stuff that you get at the parts store for $2 a foot. So don't get that confused. Make sure it's submersible fuel line. So let me go ahead and get that fuel hose off of there, get that pump unlatched from the sending unit and swapped over. I grabbed this bottom brass looking piece here, pulled it down away from the fuel pump, pried the fuel pump over to the side. Now I'm going to try to pull the fuel pump and the fuel line off of that pipe there. It's going to take two hands. I'm going to be careful not to jerk on the wires. Then I'm going to unplug the wire harness. So I have the pump unplugged from the sending unit. As you can see, the new pump has a lot fatter spades on the pump than the old one. So I'm going to have to splice in the new wire harness. Just make sure that the polarity is right. The ground is on one side, the positive is on the other side. You could decide whether or not you want to use this old hose or the new hose. If the old hose looks good, you know it's a good hose, you may want to use it. If you got a cheap, crappy replacement pump, I don't know if it has the right hose, but you may want to use it. I know that's submersible, not really sure on this, so I'm probably going to use the hose that came on the car. So let me go ahead and undo this wire harness, splice in my new wire harness, and get this pump set in place and get the sock on. When I look at this sending unit, I see that there's some kind of resistor or something in the line. So I am going to leave that on there. I'm going to splice my connector in closer to this connector, I'm not going to bypass that. You want to leave that on there. That may be picking up noise to help the fuel pump get cleaner electricity. So try not to disturb that. So let me cut this off, splice my wires in. They do not have to be weather tight. It's good if you solder that stuff on, but you can crimp them on. That'll be okay. Again, try not to rough anything up or break anything. I crimped them on. As long as wires don't touch each other in there, that's fine. You could heat shrink them if you want, or use the kind of connectors that have shrink wrap in them. This is what I got out in the field away from electricity, so this is what I'm gonna do. So let me go ahead and set the pump in place. Here's a piece of rubber that came in the kit. Looks like it'll go on the bottom of the pump and almost fit on the bottom of here. I'm probably going to cut these little tabs off of it so it'll fit down in there right, and I'm going to use this instead of the one that I got off of there. The one that I got off of there is like this, so that should be good. I might be able to even use the one that came off of it. Yeah, it sits in there pretty good. Yeah, I think I'm going to use the one that I got off of there and just put the sock on there. This sock had a little dust cap on it. I removed the dust cap. I slid the sock over the pump. I pushed that clip on there with the pliers. Make sure you don't lose that clip. That keeps the sock on there. Now I'm ready to put that grommet on the bottom. Put the hose clamp over the pipe there or on the hose, and then slide this in position in the fuel sending unit after I plug in the electrical connector. Before you put your hose on your pump, you want to dry fit it. Make sure that the pump fits. Sometimes the pumps are bigger than the ones that you removed. So I put the rubber piece on, I set it in place in the bottom of the unit, and guess what? My pump is too long for the unit. See there? So I got to make a decision. Do I want to cut the pump or do I want to cut the sending unit? I don't want to cut the pump because it may damage something in the pump. So I'm going to cut this sending unit, leave about 1/4 of an inch gap there so that my hose could take it up. So I won't have my little barb there anymore, but I'm going to cut this pipe about 1/4 inch higher than this fuel pump is, because this fuel pump is bigger than the last one. And make sure I don't cut it too high. I don't want too much space in that hose, or you'll just have to use a longer hose, which is fine. But I want to use the hose that was in there because it's still pliable, it doesn't have any damage, and I know it's submersible fuel hose 100%. I feel good about that. It says tank fuel hose on it. This one doesn't have anything on it. So let me grab my hacksaw and cut this pipe about 1/2 inch off of it. I'd cut the pipe. I didn't want it putting too much pressure on that rubber grommet on the bottom. So that's about how much I took off. I filed off the rough edges, hung it down. I'm gonna blow through this hole to blow the little metal shavings out, and it should be good to go. So there we have it. The pump, the sending unit, the hose on there and clamped, the wires connected. That's still plugged in. So I'm going to plug this back in. Make sure your gasket is good. If it's got tears in it, you might want to order a new one from Toyota. I'm going to set this in place, screw this down, hook up the connectors, and I'm going to change the fuel filter before I pressurize all this stuff up to the engine. Put all of your screws in, turn them a few times with your fingers before you tighten any of them down. Make sure all of them are started. Snug them down. This is not a wheel lug nut. It don't have to be super tight. Just snug them down. Then hook up that fuel line, and that electrical connector, and then put your cap back on the floor. When you're making your connection, massage that thing down till you hear it click. I think it clicked while I was talking, all the way down on the bottom. If you feel that this information was useful, please like it and share it with your social media friends. You can subscribe to my channel so that you will get notifications of future videos that I post. You can follow me on Twitter, and if you need to contact me directly, please visit my website. And if you have any questions, leave them below and someone or myself will reply to them. Again, thank you very much for watching.